Hi everyone, it's Gavin J, the best thing since Jupiter, and you're listening to the Therapy Suite right here on UK Health Radio, the world's number one talk health radio. This week I interview Andy Jansons, who is the founder of Alexander Jansons Myocarditis UK charity. We'll be finding out more about myocarditis. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, Andy. How are you doing? You're right.
I was just about to say, Gavin, myocarditis.
Myocarditis, is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you. Do you know what? I looked at it earlier and I'm thinking, oh gosh, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. I just knew there was something going to go wrong. Can I just say that again? Myocarditis, is that right?
Myocarditis.
Yeah. Myocarditis.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Welcome to the show, Andy. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good. Really good to say. We're up in Edinburgh at the moment, and it's a cracking city, as we were chatting earlier. Bit chillier than the sort of London area, but pleasure to be up here and a pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you too. Yeah, I think it's always, as we mentioned before, it's always a few degrees less with the wind chill is a bit different to London or south, isn't it?
No, I tend to find London, you're leaving it sunny and you get up here and people still walking around in duffel coats.
That's true as well. That is true. Andy, look, you've done so much. I think it would be great for our listeners to find out a bit about yourself and your background. If you can just tell us a little bit about that, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, sure. So, crikey, where do I start? So,
start when you were 21. How about that?
When I was 20, in my 20s, I was at college in Nottingham, actually. College is university now, but in those days, you used to have polytechnics, which are more, dare I say, work-orientated, placement-orientated as well. So I was doing a degree in something called urban estate surveying, which is essentially real estate. And I graduated from there and then worked around the Midlands a little bit in property agency, which basically involved letting shops, offices, industrial units, land, and then over a period of time sort of worked my way up in the industry, running an area in Leicester, and decided ultimately, actually, from a property value point of view, the bigger values are being achieved nearer London for obvious reasons. So moved myself to roughly near I am now, which is the Thames Valley on the M4 and M40 corridors, and settled down in Wokingham near Reading, and started a family at the time. So I had two boys, Alexander and Thomas. And really happy, actually. My son Thomas now is 31 and he's joined me in my current business. I'm now a property developer, developing in my own right, building things like hotels, which is why I'm in Edinburgh. We've recently finished the first Virgin Hotel outside America. Richard Branson was over here about a month ago opening it.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Congratulations.
And it's a great brand. I don't want to talk about brands particularly, but Virgin is always an exciting brand to work with. Whatever it does, it livens things up. So we're property developers, covering the same sectors: hotels, food stores. We build Lidl's, Aldi's, drive-throughs, and all sorts of things. And I've got two younger children now as well. So my younger son is now just over 2, and my daughter will be 5 in July. So they keep me young.
They keep your energy up.
Exactly. You don't have a choice, do you?
You don't. That's great. I think that's brilliant and fantastic. You're doing so well as well. So well done on that. Let's start with, what is the heart condition myocarditis, and how does it affect the heart?
Yeah, so myocarditis, it's a strange thing to say, but it's almost when your own immune system attacks your heart muscle. Your immune system thinks that your heart muscle is a virus. Yeah, so it's effectively attacking it to nullify it. How does it affect the heart? Well, there's several degrees, really. You could have had myocarditis almost without realizing it. So you might have some flu-like symptoms and you're fine. I guess a medium level is where it's a little bit more serious, and it's actually attacked the heart. It can be treated with drugs. What does it mean by attacking the heart? Well, the heart's like everything else in the body. It can scar, and sometimes where it's attacked the heart, it's left scar tissue, and that can affect how the heart functions ultimately, resulting in things like cardiomyopathy or arrhythmias, where your heart's beating too fast or too slow. You can enlarge the heart. But at a medium level, they're all treatable, actually. So there's drugs that the specialists can give you to keep those things under control. And then, unfortunately, the worst case scenario, well, there's a level before the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is one loses one's life, or you can lose a life, or actually the level slightly before that is you can result in a heart transplant, which again, is challenging, but it's a result that it hasn't resulted in the ultimate as well. So it can be quite serious, but equally, so there's a lot of people who would have had it without realizing it.
Oh, can it be? Another question is, can it be undiagnosed as well, or there might be a delay in coming across diagnosis at all? Do you know?
Yes, and I think one of the things we'll come on to later that I think we've achieved as a charity is the awareness, and the awareness is what's the awareness? It's awareness for parents to think about it, and I'll come back to age groups. Actually, it's quite important as well, but also doctors and hospitals to bear in mind when you're seeing patients that myocarditis is out there and should be considered. And it's not as unknown as it used to be, but the diagnosis was difficult because most people didn't know it existed. Most doctors, hospitals, and so on and so forth. So that's the challenge.
Yeah, no, it sounds it. Are there any other? I know you mentioned a few things, but are there any other symptoms that the condition can basically cause at all? Do you know? Like, just throwing it out there, some people might get flu-like symptoms, or just as an example. But are there things that kind of come out of it? And again, that might mix up with other symptoms of other conditions.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Gavin. Actually, so the most prevalent symptom is persistent flu-like symptoms. Actually, over a period of a couple of weeks. But let's face it, when we get the flu, it quite often is a couple of weeks, isn't it? But I think the key probably is, which what I want to go back on, is the age groups and the gender, because the age groups are, unfortunately, from young babies through to young adults, dare I say, into the 30s, predominantly males, and predominantly, sporty people as well. So it's quite linked to the activity with quite excessive sporting athletes.
Gosh, it's sad, isn't it? Because you think, if you're doing your exercise and you're healthy, but however, on the flip side, such conditions can still affect you in a sense, which is
yeah. I mean, I think from sports career, some quite renowned names that have been in the headlines. Actually, you've got Daley Blind was a Man U footballer. For instance, it's interesting with him actually because he had it, and usually you're not advised to go back and play football. But I think in Holland they're a bit more relaxed, so he's back playing football. And then you had Ericsson, who's playing for Man U at the moment, quite famously, fairly recently. I think in the Euros he collapsed actually. Now I'm not saying that was myocarditis, and the challenging thing there was nobody ever really revealed what exactly happened. But again, that's fairly similar actually as well.
Gosh. In terms of the charity, when and why did you start the charity Myocarditis UK?
Yeah, so we started it back towards the end of 2013. Why? Well, unfortunately, from our point of view, we had the extreme case of actually losing my middle son, Alexander, when he was 18 in 2013. So we're actually coming up to our 10-year anniversary at the moment in terms of losing him, and that's actually gone really quickly. What happened, from our point of view, was that, and this is a typical example. Now, he was really healthy with quite a sporty family. He was a footballer. He could bench press, certainly way more than I ever could in the gym. Really looked after himself, very healthy, no signs of any issues whatsoever. And then, much as the youngsters do at that sort of age, 18, he had gone to a beach party in Croatia for a week, a music festival. And they called us saying that she didn't feel quite well, thought he'd eaten a bit of chicken that wasn't quite right, but carried on, came home and was exhibiting this sort of flu-like symptoms persistently for a couple of weeks, had a bit of backache as well. Been to the doctor a couple of times, and the doctors, just sort of said, well, you just got to get yourself through it. And then it was a Saturday night, actually, July the 13th. So I was looking at it as the night of July 13th. And I'd gone to Spain. We were going to have a couple of weeks holiday. And Alexander was going to come out a couple of days later with my wife. And so I got a phone call on the Saturday night to say Alexander was found dead, about 100 yards from our house, out of nowhere. Obviously, absolutely devastating, dreadful phone call, obviously, which I'll never forget, and has affected us as a family quite drastically. And it's a memory that always sticks in your mind. So, we'd had quite a long road which is dark near us, and even at 18, it's a little bit sinister. And he got back home about 2 a.m, I think, and decided to sprint up this dark road, and clearly that had affected him. And that's really the background. So why did I start it? It's really our experience, because never heard of myocarditis. A lot of people haven't. But I guess when I look back, we were lucky that we had it diagnosed reasonably quickly, because where we are, our local hospital is High Wycombe Hospital. And because of the heart condition, they didn't have a specialist there. And they contacted Royal Brompton, who are linked to Harefield as well, which has got a massive reputation, with heart transplants and stuff. And they described the symptoms over the phone to a cardiologist called Dr. Sanjay Prasad, who's a major figure in our charity from a research point of view. And he explained to them that he was 95% certain over the phone with the history, i.e. the flu-like symptoms, and then a sudden heart attack, and where we ended up, he was 95% certain it was myocarditis. So we started off looking back with a diagnosis where there's a lot of people out there who don't actually get the diagnosis, and find out way afterwards that it actually happened. So there's nothing lucky about it, I suppose. But what it did for me at the time was, like we all do when we've got afflictions or family members have, you do the research, you look for help, you want to speak to people about it. What was clear at the time was there's nothing actually out there. There's no help. Nobody knew what myocarditis was. You put into Google at the time, and it came up with a foundation in America, and that was really the only thing. And for me, I thought this is just not good enough, actually. Something had to be done about it. So I'm sure, I was convinced there are other people out there, and we didn't want other people to go through what we did as a family, ultimately. So that was the background starting it up. So I felt the urge to do something about it at that point in time. And my initial urge was to contact, a very big charity to see how I could work with them to help families in a similar situation and prevent it happening, actually. And I guess when you go into these things, Gavin, you also think to yourself, well, a bit like cancer research, you think, well, can we actually find a solution to it? Is there a way of finding a solution to it? I suppose that was the ultimate aim. So having gone to this big charity, and I think I took them the wrong way at the time, if I'm being quite frank, because I've gone to this big charity and said, I really want to do something about this. Can I work with you? Will you support me in doing something going forward to find some solutions to help people, etc.? And he said to me, Andy, we look at myocarditis, and effectively, from our point of view, we don't know what to do. We put it in this sort of dustbin on the side there as an issue because we don't know where to start and what to do with it either. And I actually took that as quite a derogatory comment because I'd gone to see him and say, well, I want to do something about it. So I took that as an incentive for me to go and do something myself. And that is, I was going to say in a nutshell, that's a long description of how we ended up starting a charity, effectively.
No, thank you for that, Andy, and for sharing that. Obviously it's very personal, but also you want to help as well on the greatest stage of things. And so I think it's brilliant what you're doing, We're just going to a quick ad.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
So, Andy, I mean, you started a charity. How's it going?
Yeah, so it's dare I say it's exciting because the sort of world's our oyster. I wouldn't say we're pioneers, but we're one of the pioneers in the sector in terms of trying to do something about it. The biggest challenge I had at the start was, well, where do we start? Actually, never done it before. Where do we head? We lined ourselves up with Dr. Sanjay Prasad in terms of helping us from a research point of view. But once I got involved in the sector, I suddenly realized that actually I'm dealing with some very way clever people than I am in this sector. But they also seem to have run off on a lot of different ideas all over the place in terms of trying to find ways of researching and finding solutions. And for me, when I got involved in it, I go back to what I said earlier, that I'm a property developer. I build things. So when I was trying to frame it in my head, I thought, well, if I'm building something, I'm starting with the foundations. Actually, foundations really are, we don't actually really know how many people get this in the UK. Maybe what we should do is do some research into that, find people who've got it, and start building a database, what we call a cohort of people who have got it. And that was the starting point for me. So we funded early days, getting in touch with people, dare I say in the South, because that's where we're based, that we can actually introduce into a research program then as well, where we're trialing ideas, they can participate in it, and we can gain some knowledge. And that was really early days, and it took a fair old while to do that. I just felt that actually we needed to start with the basics before we can actually achieve anything. And 10 years in now, we're reaping the benefits of that.
Which is fantastic. Have there been any challenges on the way at all? And what, if so, what were the biggest challenges?
Well, that for me was the biggest one, getting my head around where we go and how we do it. And and keeping some sort of control of the research as well. And from our point of view as laymen, trying to target it for results. The biggest challenges that we have really is that research isn't tangible. It's not like you're going out raising money for a bus or something like that, so people can actually see in their heads what their efforts are going to achieve from a charity point of view. So tangibility is difficult. But where we are is we've had, dozens of research papers published, which gives us a credibility in terms of what we do ultimately. So the challenges are, awareness, getting out the fact that myocarditis exists and getting it on the agendas of doctors, doctor surgeries, A&Es, prevention, and early detection. Those are all the challenges that we have.
Have the doctors been receptive to working with yourselves and also promoting more awareness around it?
We're trying to get it into the NHS at the moment. We've got a paper, you call it a crib sheet or headlines, I guess, that we're trying to get into A&Es. So when you've got young people coming in and presenting with these issues, and sometimes there could be panic attacks, and it is not dissimilar to something like that as well. But just to think about myocarditis, I know it's difficult because you're trying to get in their agenda with all sorts of other challenges and issues there as well. But yeah, we're getting there.
That's the main thing, isn't it? Step by step, as they say.
True.
Are there any other, I know you mentioned that everything's fine, but are there have things changed in terms of challenges? Are there different challenges now? Or is it all a home straight, basically, with promoting more awareness around myocarditis?
There are some new challenges. I mean, COVID was one, actually, of course, wasn't it? And that brings...
I should have guessed that one. I don't know why. And you know what? I hate personally bringing up COVID, but it happened. And we've got to be aware that it did have a massive impact on loads of things going on, especially charities. Because I remember at the time, charities were finding it so difficult to get funding. And it was awful. I spoke to a few people with charities at the time, and they said, Gavin, it's a nightmare. Everyone is closed off from us. And I thought, oh gosh. And charities are so crucial. All charities are so crucial, because they help with the awareness and, research, etc. So, sorry, go on. Yeah, you were saying about COVID.
No. It brought a number of different challenges and dare I say, some positive outcomes as well. I think, early days of COVID, it almost seems like it never happened now, doesn't it? So we're all sort of back to normal, really. But early days of COVID was Italy, if you remember, wasn't it? And I think Italy was setting the precedent for, I think, what everybody else was expecting. And there was quite a high figure came out of Italy, as I remember. I think 5% of the people who had COVID, 5% of people who had COVID also contacted myocarditis. And that's where, dare I say, the awareness started coming out. So I think everybody in the UK were expecting a similar percentage of myocarditis cases coming out of COVID. But actually, I don't actually know the exact figure, but it was nowhere absolutely near that at all. But it made people aware, and dare I say, it produced challenges for us because we've been asked a lot of questions about it as well, and there's been a lot of research about it. And I think, from our point of view, people have to make their own minds up and look at the facts out there. It's not for us to say. But you're right, actually. We, among other charities, found it impossible almost to raise money at that point in time. We're lucky we've got a mixture of people we tend to work with. So there's a lot of private individuals, but there's a lot of corporates we're now working with as well. So a lot of those were able to get back reasonably quickly. We're lucky to work with companies like Barclays, who are huge, for instance. And my own industry, in the real estate industry, we do a lot in the hotel sector. So a lot of the hotel brands tended to support us as well. So it was quite a challenging time, for a lot of us, from a charity point of view. But out of that, we adapted. and we've found different ways of doing things.
Which is fantastic. And I know many businesses had to find different ways as well. So it was a very challenging time, you know. We're just going to another quick ad break and we'll be right back.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
So in terms of research, where's the research at the moment heading in terms of myocarditis? Is there much going on at the moment, more than before?
Yes, it's a case of actually narrowing things down. It goes back to what I said earlier about foundations. So foundations-wise, we've actually got quite a big cohort of people now, up to about 500. But I've not actually mentioned Facebook and a few other groups that we've got as well. But a big thing for me also, you think about research, you think about biological research or genetic research, but something we've also funded is actually going back on NHS records, which I think is quite a big thing. I said earlier on, for me, I come at things from a foundation point of view and the basics. So we're able to go back, I think, over 20 years worth of records to find out the incidence of myocarditis in the UK, and then analyse those results and stratify them. Are they males? Are they females? How old are they? Which areas of the country they come out from as well. So when we're approaching people for funding for research, we should actually be a bit more specific in terms of the prevalence of it going forward. So what does the research actually mean? But we're a 100% non-profit organisation. Every donation goes towards our three main aims, which I outlined earlier: awareness, early detection, and prevention. And we do use some of our donations to increase awareness and have an awareness campaign. But we're so lucky to have opportunities like we have today with you, where we can talk about it and your listeners can bear it in mind. What I tend to find, Gavin, is actually if I speak to a room of 100 people, and bear in mind your audience is quite huge. If I speak to a room of 100 people, I can guarantee that one or two will always come up to me with some sort of instance of myocarditis, either themselves or a family or some sort of family connection. So that gives you a bit of an idea of the prevalence of it out there, actually. But funding research is a challenge because we can't show pictures. But it costs £1,000 to add a patient to our research program, which is massive. But what we also do is we fund young researchers full salaries. So rather than have a research slow down or worst case come to a stop, we can part fund the salaries so the vital work they do keeps going on and we don't lose the momentum. Genetics is something that we've found is a massive thing, actually. We identified a gene called titin, Titin, which predisposes people to myocarditis. Now, I will emphasize that, predisposes people to myocarditis. So if you've got the gene, it doesn't mean necessarily you're going to get it. But you might have a particular virus, going back to flu-like symptoms, which interacts with the gene, which results in bringing on the myocarditis. And that's a real big area of search going forward for us.
Gosh, so there's basically, by the sound of things, a genetic link, possibly in terms of people, unfortunately, developing myocarditis. Is that right?
Yes, there is a genetic link to it, actually, yes. So that's where we've been focusing a lot of our research. So having identified genes that potentially predispose people to myocarditis, we can then do some more research and sort of classify them further from a genetic point of view to say, well, look, if you divide it into A, B, and C, the A genes potentially don't have an effect. The B genes could have an effect, and the C genes definitely do have an effect. So in those that have had myocarditis, one of the important things to do now is actually do the whole genetics thing to see if anybody else in the family is like. For instance, for me personally, what's come out along the way is that my son had certain genes that predisposed him. I've got those as well, actually, but mine are benign, whereas his weren't. So the exciting thing for me now is that the next stage for us is, having identified those genes, is to identify a way of actually switching them off. That's the next thing. So it's great identifying them, and then you can say to people, actually, you're at risk and be careful and watch this and watch that and watch out for the symptoms. But the big thing then is to say, well, okay, we've identified them. Actually, if you take this solution, then we can switch them off and you're not going to get it.
So that now the big task lies ahead. I think it's fantastic that it's been identified. And I'm guessing more research is needed in terms of going forwards in how you turn off those genes. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So it sounds like it's a future objective, present.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and another initiative, just thinking about what else we're up to. One of the big things for us early days was not to get involved in any animal testing. And that was a challenge, and a prerequisite, I think, from our point of view as well, in terms of working with the researchers. But a real exciting way that we're working on right now is stem cell heart research. And the whole stem cell thing everywhere is changing the way forward. And my colleague Sarah, who's listening at the moment, has nicknamed it "heart in a jar," which is how she describes it. Which essentially means that one of our researchers is growing little miniature hearts in petri dishes that we can trial various things on, from a genetic point of view, putting in the sort of genes that cause the problems, and then treating them with various potential solutions and seeing if they work actually as well. So that's 10 years in, if you think about it. Foundation starting with all the people who are part of our research programs, taking the genetics, finding the genetics, and then working on solutions to stop other people getting them. Massive thing for me also, and I meant to mention it under our discussion around COVID, because what do we do with COVID? We tested for it, of course, didn't we? So we also had these little litmus tests that we're all using. And a massive thing for us and going forward is doctors and A&Es having the ability to actually test for myocarditis on the spot, i.e. when you walk in. At the moment, if you go in, you do a blood test, it gets sent off, and it takes a while to come back, days sometimes. Where we want to be is you go into your doctors or A&E, and you can do a test, what we call a pinprick test on the spot. A little bit of blood, similar to what we did with COVID. Put it into a little droplet into the little template, and somehow give you a result to say you have myocarditis. Now, with COVID, our ability to actually find that little testing tray has moved on massively. And we've been working with the Imperial College to produce something exactly like that. And the COVID process accelerated all that. So we're not in a position yet to announce anything, but we're heading down the right route to be able to have something like that potentially can be used by general practitioners and A&E departments to identify myocarditis before it gets too far.
That'd be fantastic, I think, moving forwards and getting to that point, I think it's also brilliant that you chose not to use animals, because that's very, I mean, as we know, all research stems around using animals.
It does.
Unfortunately, and it's been like that for hundreds of years through medicine. So I think it's fantastic that, you're trying to look for other ways around it. And I think you guys need to be recognized for that, because it's definitely unique. I don't, when it comes to research around, conditions, usually, unfortunately, animals, my understanding is used. Maybe not everywhere, but very certainly I don't hear often about research not using animals. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a fundamental thing for us. I think it's important, because, the charity, I was working with a lot of young adults, and, we have principles and they have principles. And I think it's important to know the money they're raising is not being used to do that, actually. And did that hamper us? It didn't hamper us, no, actually, thinking about it. So, it's a fundamental principle.
Brilliant. In terms of, have you come across any other causes of myocarditis at all?
Yeah, it can be caused by cancer treatment, actually. And another interesting one, actually, I should have mentioned earlier, famous ex-rugby player, was a member of the World Cup winning England rugby team, Matt Dawson. Lives in the West London area, and he was doing a lot of training in the park training, and he was bitten by a tick, actually, whilst he was in the park, and that tick led to a viral infection that he picked up, and that viral infection itself led to myocarditis. So I guess, that's not a different way, but it is another viral route, actually. It's just random things, Gavin, like that. You don't know how a virus is going to interact with your genetic makeup, for instance. That is a challenging bit. But I think the key for us is that, we identified the genetics as being a key aspect of it. So, and that's taken 10 years to get there.
Gosh, that is... I've never heard of it, anything like that, to be honest with you. So the tick bite triggered it injected some kind of virus, which triggered the condition, basically.
Correct. Yeah.
Gosh, you would have never heard of anything like that. That is very unfortunate, to be fair.
But no, he survived, to be fair, but he did suffer quite badly. So he was, maybe you watched Question of Sport. He was one of the presenters on Question of Sport.
I used to ages ago, yeah. Maybe not now, but basically, yeah. When you said the name, though, I do recognise the name. But and thankfully he's fine, and
absolutely, yeah.
I think
again,
sorry, you were saying. Sorry.
Awareness. Sorry. Yes. Yeah. From
is he involved at all? Is he involved in myocarditis and the charity at all? I'm just asking randomly now because I'm just curious.
Interesting enough, he chose to publicise more the whole tick-borne viral aspect of it rather than myocarditis. I've spoken to him about it, but he's, it's like all of us. You're committed generally to one charity where you spend a lot of time, and he was that was the essential cause of it. So I guess he's going to the root of it.
Yeah, no, of course. So myocarditis now, UK has been going for 10 years. And I know you mentioned a few things, but has there been any other highlights that you've experienced over the past decade?
Well, I'll tell you, a big one for me is the sense of saving lives as well. And I think a big one for me was a young guy, mentioning those surnames, but Marcus, who was a friend of my son Alexander, who we lost. And he was doing some work with us and supporting us from a charitable point of view. And he picked up flu-like symptoms, actually. He'd been to his doctor a couple of times, and had similar feedback. Got flu, take the usual stuff, and rest. And I think he went back a third time and said, no, I want you to check me for myocarditis. This is persistent. It's been too long. And that's exactly what his general practitioner did. and discovered they had myocarditis. Now, that's a direct result of actually awareness and working with us. That, have we saved his life? Who knows, ultimately. But it's a feeling that actually the awareness got through to, dare I say, the younger guys who tend to work with, to actually ask the question in the first place. Because I'm sure, that doctor wouldn't even have thought about it, actually.
100%. And you always have that saying, isn't it? Just to save one person, even if it's not too serious, but just the stress of, later on what might have happened if it wasn't diagnosed so early, it's all worth it, isn't it? Just for that one person, even though you're doing a lot more work, I'm sure there's more people's lives that have been saved, etc. There's more awareness, but just to know there's just that one person, it makes it all worth it, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. So that's probably my biggest, in my view, the biggest achievement. But point of care test, which you just talked about, if we can make that and commercialize it, that's a huge thing. We also backed something called Heart Hive, which is a research website where people suffering myocarditis can actually register, and various programs can be worked with them in terms of researching myocarditis. Also, a massive thing for us was last year reaching a milestone of raising £1 million, which was huge. That's really down to the support of all the guys and corporates that tend to work with us. And in conjunction with that, we were also nominated to be a Small Charity of the Year at the Charity Awards, which was acknowledging the work we've done as a charity. In addition to that, one of our researchers, Kaz Tile, won the coveted Women in Science Award, and she's still researching myocarditis. Also, Dr. Amrit Lota won the British Society of Heart Failure Young Investigator Award in 2021. And that's all validation in a very challenging research environment, actually, that our researchers are actually receiving awards for research that they're undertaking on our behalf. And again, that's 10 years of paving the way. It's all sort of the last year or two coming together now, going back again to those foundations and those early days of actually, pulling together a cohort of people who have got it and researching how many people in the UK have had it. So starting with the facts to enable this research to come to fruition effectively. And coming back to COVID again, actually I forgot to mention that, the government issued an advisory paper, is probably the best thing that you could call it. And our research was the number one quoted bit of research to do with myocarditis. And again, that's testament and government validation in terms of what we've done. And we're really proud of that. It's a difficult task, to see your way through all the various avenues that research could go.
100%. I think well done, fantastic, and to all the researchers involved. I think it's brilliant what you guys are doing, and to be recognised as well, for the great work that's taking place as well. How can people get more involved in fundraising for the charity?
Well, check out our website, Myocarditis UK. But it's events. I've put myself through a lot of events that I never thought I would have done, i.e., jumping out of planes, all sorts of stuff, climbing up hills, going through challenges. Corporates can adopt us, and we're happy to work with them. We're a company called Ensenio. We're about to do cycle from their London office in Southwark to their Paris office over a period of days, of a weekend. So many ways. We've got all sorts of challenges, quiz nights, balls, etc. So check out the website. Please do contact us direct.
That's fantastic. Jumping out of a plane, Andy. I've
got a fear of heights as well.
Oh no!
I'll tell a story actually. When we used to go to Disney in Florida, and with all those big rides. I used to go on with my eyes closed, and I thought, well, why am I sitting on these big rides with my eyes closed? So in the end, I ended up holding the hands of all the little kids whilst everybody else went on the big rides.
No, look, I think it's brilliant what yourselves are doing, for the charity. If people want to find out more information about, myocarditis, or they want to reach out for advice or anything like that, is there anywhere you can go to, or maybe your social media or website? And you might have mentioned the website already.
I did mention the website actually, but we do have Facebook groups as well. But again, if you look at the website, all the information is on there to contact those. And something we didn't mention, Gavin, which again is something that we sort of picked up during our research, but actually, thinking about all the people we've identified with it and we work with, there's a massive psychological side to this as well, because people don't know how it's going to affect them. We had a really good example where we had a patients evening, and one of the guys there stood up and said, "Well, I'm a lorry driver, actually. Now that I've got myocarditis, I'm not allowed to drive a lorry. I can't work anymore. What can I do about that? How do I deal with that and actually get myself signed back in to be able to drive?" And then there's exercise. People know, can you exercise? Will it bring myocarditis on? Will it result in a heart attack going forward? And there's all those worries, the psychological side of it, which is something we can help with as well going forward. So hence the Facebook, where people have a chat. Members of families can have a chat with those that suffer from myocarditis. And we've also listed on there various websites that we feel are worth checking out for more information as well.
Andy, thanks for your time today. It's been, a great insight into myocarditis and UK and the great work that you're all doing. And thank you for that as well, and raising the awareness. I think it's fantastic work. Thank you very much. Okay.
No, thank you to you. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
And thank you to our listeners. You can find me on Instagram at GavinJ417. Until next time, take care.